TV22 Marion, a small independent television station located in the heart of Ohio, has been watching the economic crisis that faces this great nation and has been telling anyone that will listen that there has got to be a better way. In February of 2009, prior to the federal stimulus plan, we introduced to our viewing public the TV22 stimulus plan, a plan that called for the government to give the money back to the people and let the vast network known as the American people drive this economy to what it once was. Despite our efforts, Washington did it their way. That was then, and this is now. We now have the clear vision of hindsight to stand up tall and say it clearly did not work. We're still beating the drum to the tune of the American people, but this time we are taking it to a whole new level. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Josh Berridge and the TV22 stimulus package.
How many of you remember those $300 stimulus checks we used to get in the mail when President 43 was on his way out? $300 is chump change in comparison to the stimulus checks handed out by President 44 to people other than the American taxpayer. Back in February, I stood before you, as I do today, to say it was time to call for our own stimulus, a common sense stimulus package that would burn holes in our favorite pair of jeans. At the time, based on the total number of taxpayers and the $7.36 trillion spent, according to one news agency, to stimulate the economy, every U.S. taxpayer could have received a check for $50,000. Well, it's nearly a year later. Americans are sitting in a catatonic state as the federal government continues to pour greenbacks into corporate America to, again, stimulate the economy. GM may as well stand for government money, seeing that the government owns a majority stake. Well, speaking of the automotive industry, cash for clunkers certainly got people into dealerships of foreign car companies. The banking industry showed signs of promise until Bank of America said they were in the red in mid-October. What happened to all that money we gave you? What? Oh, yeah, that's right. The top executives, they went out and bought furniture and airplanes, and they rented five-star resorts to show their employees a good time. I guess I'd like a weekend at a top-notch joint as 24-hour news channels continue to say my employer was on the skids financially. Tell you what, it's only going to get worse. Those cash for clunker transactions boosted the bottom lines of more foreign companies than American. And what about all the loans needed to finance the remaining balance on those cars? You better hope the nearly 10% unemployment rate in the U.S. does not include those people who traded in the '89 Escort wagon for the 2009 Fusion. It's speculation, I know. Getting to the point, did it all really stimulate the economy? Well, through this layperson's eyes, not hardly. So how much money has gone to the entities other than the ones that drive the economy? It all depends on who you ask and where you look. I looked at two numbers. Numbers from the U.S. government and their nifty little website, recovery.gov, and CNNmoney.com's bailout tracker. So in the end, what's the damage? Well, the amount either committed to big businesses like banking and the automotive industry, combined with the total amount of federal contracts awarded to states and other U.S. commonwealths, comes to, ta-da! $11 trillion. Yes, trillion with a T. The sad part is I would have said 11 trillion had I not added the amount in federal contracts. That total was only $14.6 billion. Granted that only $2.8 trillion of the $11 trillion has been invested into big business, the remainder is committed, meaning there was a promise involved somewhere. Now, if you're near a chair, sit in it. On Thursday, October 29th, Congress will be introducing a new stimulus bill for the banking industry, which could total as much as $2 trillion. Yes, trillion with a T. It's like the ringer in a title fight. Get knocked out, get up, and get paid for it. Wish I could get paid for ruining something around here. Okay, back to the $2 trillion that's somewhat on the table, but not yet spoken for. Remember back in February when I did this and I said, give it back? Well, at the time, we used the number $7.36 trillion. This amount would have given every U.S. taxpayer around $53,000. I know I said 50, but it's actually more like 53. Moving on. I realize we can't spend money that's already been spent and budgeted for other uses, but that $2 trillion is still open to suggestion. Let's see here. Let's divide $2 trillion by 138 million taxpayers, and we get $14,492.75. Okay, I know it's a little less than we anticipated, but it's still enough to go out and buy you a car. It's enough to take your family on the vacation you haven't been able to afford in a long time. It'd put your son or daughter through community college, or maybe even a year at a university. You could redo the kitchen, you could redo the bathroom, maybe even the basement. The point is, you could buy something significant or a lot of something insignificant. Either way, the money would go directly into the economy. Stores would turn a profit, manufacturers would have to make more products, and people would be at work. In a perfect world, right? Well, we know this isn't a perfect world, and in a non-perfect world, almost everything has a string attached to it, including this. The one stipulation is you have to spend the money and prove you spent it, or just give it back. That's it. Now think about that. 138 million people spending $14,000 apiece. I'm definitely not an economist, but it sounds like a better way to inject money into the economy than giving it to banks so they can buy other banks. Sounds simple enough, right? But we can't just call it give everyone $14,000 and make them spend it plan. We got to have something catchy. Let's see here. What can we call this? Oh, I know. Why don't we just call it what we originally called it? The TV22 stimulus plan. So in the end, we'll just have to let history be the judge, whichever route the U.S. government takes in their attempt to save American capitalism. But we should at least play all the options while we can. If you can, answer me this one question. Why not the TV22 stimulus plan? I mean, the only problem I see is you'll have to think about what you're going to buy, and that's a problem I can definitely live with. I'm sure you could too.
Now, as you ponder your upcoming shopping spree, allow yourself to imagine the stimulating effect on the American economy. But now the problem exists. Will they listen to such a common sense approach? They will, but only if we band together and force them to listen. This November, David will take on Goliath as the TV22 Marion crew packs up and heads to Washington, D.C. to make our voices heard. With talk of another $2 trillion injection into the banking industry, it's time that we stand up, united, and tell our public officials, the ones that were elected to serve us, that enough is enough. Support our effort by visiting our website, TV22stimulus.com, and let them know that you agree with the TV22 stimulus package. Become a Facebook fan, check out our blog, and follow us on Twitter as we storm Washington and demand answers. Or better yet, join us at our nation's capital and become a part of this movement to give the people's money back. I'll see you in Washington.